afternoon. The genesis for Get Scotland Dancing was 2008. Glasgow had just been announced as the host city for the 2014 Commonwealth Games, and at the Scottish Arts Council, which is what we were formerly known as, we began to explore with colleagues in the Scottish Government the unprecedented opportunity that the London 2012 Olympics and Paralympics, alongside the Glasgow 2014 Commonwealth Games, presented for Scotland's cultural sector. There was a determination that this would provide the context for a unique cultural celebration which would enable Scotland's most significant programme of ambitious artistic events. And it was vital that dance should be at the heart of this. Brilliantly, the politicians agreed. And this was reflected in a document which the Scottish Government produced, the 2014 Legacy Plans. And it stated in that, and I just emphasise, this is the politicians stating this, we will work with our partners to develop activities that will motivate and inspire people across Scotland to get active, to get physical, to get dancing. We recognise that not everyone likes to play sports, but we believe we can encourage just about everyone in Scotland to get dancing in some capacity and to celebrate this sporting and cultural extravaganza in true style, both during and beyond the Games. Get Scotland Dancing placed dance at the centre of this cultural celebration, which began in 2012 and culminated in Culture 2014 and Festival 2014, the cultural response to the Glasgow Commonwealth Games. It would raise the profile of dance as a creative, participative and physical art form, and in support of this, Creative Scotland committed 1.5 million of National Lottery funding in creating an inclusive celebration of dance across Scotland and linking into the wider UK and marking Scotland's place in the world. Get Scotland Dancing has simply aimed to inspire more people to get involved and enjoy the experience of dancing. Working with Scotland's key and leading dance organisations, Get Scotland Dancing has brought people together to dance in public spaces, in towns, villages and cities. In 2012, 6 hubs across Scotland presented programmes as part of the UK-wide Big Dance celebrations. And over the final weekend of the London 2012 Festival, the Michael Clark Company created a landmark event for Glasgow, the Barrowlands Project, marking the change in focus at that point from what had been achieved through London 2012 and over to Glasgow 2014. As Scotland prepared for the Commonwealth Games, Get Scotland Dancing developed its own identity and widened its reach to more than 300 partners across the whole of Scotland. This was the network of people who brought their energy, ideas and sheer hard work into bringing Get Scotland Dancing to life. In 2014 alone, around 66,000 people participated in the Get Scotland Dancing programme. And I'm going to take a little pause here, and we've got a film which tells a bit of that journey. I returned to work in July this year after a year's parental leave, and Get Scotland Dancing has eased my return to work. My first week back at the desk was balanced by being able to attend performances part of the Commonwealth Youth Dance Festival produced by Y-Dance, being inspired by the range of performances from young people across the Commonwealth who gathered in Glasgow, bursting with pride at the Scottish groups sharing their work alongside some of the most excellent youth groups from around the world. And also humbled by the dedication and vision of young dancers, such as those from Namibia who came to Glasgow and shared their experiences of operating in a very different and very challenging context, and for whom their dancing is a voice of hope in their country. So I couldn't have chosen a better time to return to work. immediately I was out experiencing the power of dance, seeing it in action, not just the words on reports and applications that make up quite a large part of my daily routine. And as July progressed, so did Get Scotland Dancing, a programme that included dance trails, dance along movies and events, and I was able to experience a wealth of different dance during the heady days of the summer of 2014. I also put my body where my mouth was for once and danced myself. I took the step of participating in Barrowlands Ballet, The River, and had the physical exertion of dancing with 60 other dancers of all ages, alongside musicians and singers, taking over the streets and stopping the traffic in Glasgow city centre. Get Scotland Dancing has been more than the public events. It's also involved some grassroots interventions which have sought to break down barriers to participating in dance. It's included partnerships to place dance development officers in areas such as Perth and Kinross, Fife, Inverclyde and Elanshire, which is the Western Isles, far out in the west coast of Scotland. Activities that have engaged some of the most vulnerable young people in our communities in dance, building their confidence and self-esteem, encouraging them to be physical and engage with others, giving them space to relax, have fun and be themselves, demonstrating that dance can be a voice for hope in our country too. The summer of Get Scotland Dancing 2014 was brought to a finale with the Gather Together Festival at the end of August. Led by Independence, this inclusive festival brought together dancers from across the world, challenged perceptions of dance and who dances. And it's important to me that we have a radical and inclusive vision of dance in Scotland. I loved the dancing family in the Big Dance Pledge that Scottish Ballet created earlier this year. They dance together, many different bodies at different stages in life, dancing together and broadening our vision of dancers and what dance can be. So we're now at the place with Get Scotland Dancing where we're gathering our thoughts, reflecting on achievements and also thinking about what needs to be done next to strengthen dance in Scotland. It's brilliant to think about the people who are now participating in dance, but it's also critical for us to consider those for whom there are still barriers, to take seriously the challenge to ensure our classes and projects are and feel accessible to everyone in our communities. Many new alliances and partnerships have been formed, and we're now reflecting on how we use these moving forward. When we dance together, we're presenting a radical vision of the inclusive society that our communities could and should be. We're holding on to this as we continue to keep Scotland dancing, for the hopeful contribution that dance makes to our communities and our country's civic life.
I'd like to introduce now Luca Silvestrini, Protein, and David Massingham. Oh, you're doing it like that? You're just trying to confuse me. David first.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you, everyone, for coming to this part of People Dancing. My name is David Massingham. I'm the Artistic Director of DanceXchange, the Chief Executive, and the Co-Artistic Director of the International Dance Festival Birmingham. Yes, I've got 3 jobs, which is fantastic sometimes. Just want to tell you a little bit about why we did Invisible Dancing. We invented the International Dance Festival Birmingham in 2008, and we immediately wanted, when we created the festival for Birmingham, to do things that were free to the public, accessible to the public, and that people would come across whatever they wanted to do in terms of being part of the festival or not. So we had to come up with some really great solutions to that. We started, Luca Silvestrini was already an associate artist for DanceXchange. We began in 2008 with a project called On Display, which basically was performances in and between shop windows in one of the main shopping streets in the city. So when we came to 2010, we wanted to take the kind of idea of doing things on the high street of Birmingham quite a bit further. And I'd been a little bit kind of sick of seeing endless flash mobs in the city where kind of people were just kind of turned up and did a dance that pretty much appeared like it would have been anywhere in a theatre or not really, and bore no real framework or context to the place it was being performed in. And so we kind of looked at an idea that would turn flash mobs on its head, a kind of hybrid of flash mobs, really. And we also wanted to embed the festival in the city to make sure that councillors and the movers and shakers of the city always came across the festival, even if they never bought a single theatre ticket. And we wanted something that would work across the length of the festival so that we could kind of build on a day-to-day process. And when we actually saw what we were building for the high street in Birmingham, of course, there are many high streets all over the world. But certainly we started with the absolute intention of creating a concept that was an intervention in that high street that would be invisible at its start and become more visible throughout its then 2 week. It was a 3-week period of time, wasn't it? Kind of, we did have a few days at the beginning to rehearse the show, but it was 2 weeks in performance on the streets. We wanted something that went from invisible to be visible, and the last day of the show was called Visible Dancing. It's now called the finale in later productions. And we wanted local dance groups to be involved and be part of it, swelling the numbers from whoever was doing it over those few weeks to about 100 on the last day. So we kind of set up a framework which we invited Luca Silvestrini to fill out, colour in, create a narrative for, and develop with us over that period of time. There was a kind of small team of people that worked on the production with volunteers' help, and it grew over those few weeks on the high street of Birmingham. Of course, it produced many unusual outcomes that we couldn't have predicted at the beginning, and Luca Silvestrini is going to tell you a little bit about, how it's been developed on since those times. What we felt was important, though, that it would actually broadly achieve, that it would reanimate a city centre. Birmingham is not the most gorgeous city on earth. We don't have the blessedness of great historic buildings all over the place. It's not a natural tourist attraction, but we wanted to create something that would really animate the city streets. We wanted to create links between professionals and communities by having the local dance groups become part of the visible dancing part of it. We wanted to create the potential of creating links to businesses, because if we were going to populate the high street for a few weeks of doing this thing, we also had to create relationships with the people in the high street that used it every day. It was quite often the vendors that were on the high street, people like balloon sellers, the ice cream man, the flower seller, all those sorts of things. Some of them loved us, and some of them didn't like us so much because we took up a lot of room. But it was a very interesting process. And also, what became part of it is that we realized we had a show that was actually quite weatherproof, a dancing show on the streets that was actually quite achievable in most conditions. We also wanted it to have an opportunity to mentor young artists. In our first production, the original Protein cast was added to with about 6 or 7 new people as the period of time went on. And they ranged from dance students, indeed one of them, Patsy, went on to become part of Protein Dance after being in Visible Dancing. We had an actress that wanted to develop movement skills. We had a plumber that showed absolute skill in movement. He'd watched Luke and I in a studio. Luke was making another piece with us, and he looked in at the studio, and we said, come in and have a look at what we're doing. He sat down, this plumber. He did have classes at DanceXchange. And I said, well, if you want to get involved, there's a show coming up that maybe you could audition for. And he was pretty amazing. So that was a great thing to do. And we wanted to develop, in a very natural way, community practice, really. The idea of how you embrace community dance inside a professional production in an unusual situation, and look at the relationship between all of those things. And ultimately, I think we wanted to create an artistic piece that was totally accessible, that people could enjoy, but actually was never anything less than really massively high quality and actually truly artistic in its outcomes. And by doing that, I think we had many, many benefits from that kind of grew out of that sort of process that we achieved in those few weeks. And as we watched Invisible Dancing unfold in those few weeks, the potential of it becoming a tourable production was becoming quite clear, although it was never intended at the very beginning of the process to do that. So I'm going to hand over to Luca, who's going to tell you a little bit more about that.
Good to come second, so eyes broken. Yeah, what can I add to, just to give an idea of what, first of all, I want to say it was so great for me to, I mean, I knew David before Invisible Dancing, we worked together, and it was fantastic to be given a format to fill up with lots of ideas and explore. So I went wild with the possibilities of what this sort of parameters could give me. And so Invisible Dancing, I just wanted to just show you some facts, is a residency. We stay in the same place for 2 weeks, so it's got a residency model, which allows us to know the area and the locality and the community very well. And we perform in twice a day, and we rehearse and perform at the same time. So the piece does not exist. We make it as we perform it. So there's always an immediate reaction and a knowledge of how it went. We go back into the studio after every performance and grow it a little bit. And these all sometimes do 16 to 18 shows building up to the finale, which is the culmination of this residency, and where we bring a lot of people together. There are 6 protein dancers, there are 6 local dancers. As David said, it's a great professional development, continued professional development opportunity. We work with local musicians. There is no recorded music, it's all live music, and that's another talent we bring together from the locality. And so we go from, everything grows from invisible to visible, from small to big. So the musicians also, they go from 1 to up to 10 on the last day to form a band. And there are, for the finale day, we're trying to bring together as many local dance groups as possible to celebrate dance together. And I decided when I thought about this not to include any contemporary dance or ballet, not because I don't like it, but we wanted to sort of give visibility to those who do dance. They dance all year round, and they do tango, salsa, all that lot, and they represent a specific style. So we bring together lots of different genres of dancing, as well as Tai Chi sometimes, or martial arts and capoeira. And those make the show for the finale, those people. Plus, we got the flash mobbers, although it's not flash mob Invisible Dancing. Throughout the residency, we teach a finale routine at the end of each performance. So people in the street that happens to be there and watch the show, experience the show, they get taught a routine that then they come on the finale day to add up lots of people, lots of number, and to do the finale all together. And so at the end of the day, at the end of the run, we have sort of around 100 performers to take part. And it's been seen, we estimate around 40,000 people over 2 tours, and the first performance in Birmingham is 2010. If you move on to the next one. This is just the place where we've been so far. So it started in 2010 in Birmingham, and then we toured 2 years ago in Dublin, Doncaster, Kingston, Southend, and Coventry. And then this year we went to Bath, Cardiff. We were here a few months ago, Canterbury, and we did our first international one in Italy, in Rovereto. And what can I say? For me, it's the great thing about Visible Dancing shows that a commission can become something to exploit further, to become, now is a touring productions that we are taking in our rep, and we continue to do it. And he embraces, for me, the best of community dance in a way, because it allows me to create a show every time, and it's a full-on show, and embrace the community at its best, because we bring lots of people that would like to be part of it inside this big celebration of dance. And what is incredible for me also is the legacy that lives behind, because those dance groups that take part in the finale, for instance, they have a chance to work with a choreographer for the first time, maybe for the first time, and with a dance company, and I think they go away thinking differently about the way they dance, the way they do their tangos or their ballroom or whatever. So it's a great opportunity for them. And also it brings people together, different local talents together. The musicians and the local groups, they get to know each other. They start collaborations after we go. Same thing is for the venue and promoter that organizes it. It allows them to find out who is interested, who is dancing, and a lots of audience that they wouldn't necessarily go to see a show, because invisible dancing is not advertised during the residency. We just advertise the finale. So for 2 weeks, our audience, we market ourselves basically. We create an audience by performing at the same time, in the same location, every day. And so that potential audience can potentially become an audience for other events in the festival or in the venue. So it takes the people from the street possibly to a seat later on. And what else? I think probably that's it. Trying to keep it nice and short. I just want to finish by show you a tiny, tiny little clip to show you. Probably you find it funny, but it's funny, and this is what can happen because no one knows that this is going on, and the piece is about 6 characters. The possible characters: one is a builder, one is a chav, one is an office lady. So we emerge from the crowd day by day, and we become these sort of bigger-than-life characters. But at the very beginning, people don't really understand what's going on. And of course there is live music, but the guys that plays, they look like buskers. And so it all look very spontaneously. Sometimes people do join in spontaneously, thinking they don't really know what's going on. So I just want to leave you with this very tiny little clip from Bath. Watch the lady in green that she's just approaching the dancers. I think it's brilliant just the way she leaves. She dances, and then she goes, collects her bag and goes. But this happens quite often, especially at the beginning when we're trying to be quite invisible. So some of them were local dancers. They were pretending to be just normal crowd. And so she just, on a rainy day, just thought, why not, just join in, and she left. Thank you very much.
Thank you to David and Luca. And now I'd like to introduce Karen Gallagher from MDI.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this little session of ours. Shall we get up and dance? Okay, all right, won't do that. I usually do that sometimes, and it doesn't always go down very well, so I won't today. So I'm Karen Gallagher, and when I was asked to consider this presentation, I kind of got to thinking about my career to date. So yes, I will talk about big dance, but I wanted to just take you through some of the contexts in which I've been working over the years, because I feel that big dance in terms of participation has been very much a part of that whole process. Because we've always been creating work in various places, whether they be sighted, and for large audiences, or just to have lots of people participating. And so I concluded that to tell my story through those areas of my work over the years would create a framework in terms of the potential of the conversations that we can have to follow. Because I've been thinking about 3 questions whilst I've been thinking about this presentation, and especially since my 2014 big dance experience. Are we creating great art and culture for everybody? Who are the guardians of quality? And do we encourage failure? I want you to consider those while I'm chatting. There should be some things going on behind me. On reflection, I think the way that I work, I've always considered the role of the artist as a performer and a maker in equal measures at the heart of really what we're always creating. I've tried to involve artists and the material that's created with all the people that we've worked with over the years. And I think that's been part of the key to the success in working in that way. I think it started for me when I left Laban in 1986. I was working on a YTS scheme, if people remember those. Yes, I'm an old bird. And I'd not realised at this time that you could get a grant from the Arts, who knew? And didn't really know what the Arts Council did, still don't. But in 1988, I applied for a grant to commission an artist to make a piece of work on a group of young people that I was teaching at the time. And I chose Nikki Smedley from Geographical Duvet, who some may know as La La in the Teletubbies now. And she came and spent 5 days with us and kind of created a piece of work that really encouraged the group. It challenged them to create movements that they'd not experienced before. And it provided them with a real different approach to making their own work and really challenged me in terms of the person who teaches them regularly. And it reinforced for me what the difference is between work that's being created by an artist who is in the industry in terms of constantly, regularly making and performing work, to those of us that create work sometimes but teach a lot. And I may sort of go up in flames here, as you all sort of beat me down, but I really think there is a very different effect and impact when we work in that way. In 1992, I was the assistant director with the fabulous Veronica Lewis at Cheshire Dance, and I inherited the Cheshire Dance Epic. And it was here that I began to really consolidate the way that I work now. And I think because I brought together groups of artists and had a work commissioned on them in the first instance, and they then created the work from that piece of work with the groups that they worked with. So they were a constant part of it. They also performed within it. Because I think sometimes we create work on communities and then the communities dance and we forget that the artists are communities too and should be part of that process. And we created a piece called Ticket to Dance. So 8 dance makers work with visual artists and musicians and to create sighted works in each borough of Cheshire. I think there was about 14 of them, and culminated in a 10-day residency to pull the whole thing together, which was then performed at Cheshire Gateway. So it had lots of different levels of engagement. And I remember Tom Roden's mum, because he was one of the artists at the time, it's a long time ago, commenting about how wonderful it was to see her son dancing on the stage with the community groups, because it was a really new thing for her, and just to see him perform, which was fantastic. Mums are really interesting creatures, and I'll come on to that in a moment. A similar process was developed in 2000 when at MDI we produced Jump 2,000 Feet. It was a celebration for the millennium, working with 1,000 young people, led by 5 artists, creating work in each borough of Merseyside, culminating in a performance with about 750 of them, I think, at the Royal Court in Liverpool. And then 86 of them performed their final jump at the Everton football ground, just before the match was starting. So there we are, we had an audience of 30,000 without even thinking about it, which was fantastic, our first real experience of performing to the masses. In 2010, MDI created our first flash mob, sorry David, we all have to do it sometime, with about 300 people in Liverpool One shopping mall. It was a new shopping mall that was built to celebrate the 2008 Capital of Culture. And apparently at the particular time that we presented this flash mob, the footfall is considered to be in the region of 75,000. So, you know, if you want to use that kind of impact, just go to a shopping mall. It's brilliant for figures. Finally, I think in 2012, for Big Dance, we created our largest work to date. It was called the Big Dance Northwest Link Up, and we worked across the whole of the Northwest region. So if anybody knows the Northwest, we went from Cumbria right up north down to Congleton, the base of Cheshire. And it featured about 30 artists to pull the whole project together with 1,200 people aged between 8 and 86. And a lot of the work that we do now, I think, as an organisation, is very much about that intergenerational approach. This was a really special time for us for many reasons. Again, it had artists at its heart. I think the wonderful duo actors, Jennifer Jean Charles and Lizzie Perry, working with 25 artists to create a new work in its own right, which kind of sat independently of the work that was created initially, was fantastic. We then created 25 short works representing every borough of the region. And then we pulled together 5 regional works in Cumbria, Lancashire, Manchester, Merseyside and Cheshire. And then we linked up all 6, including the artists' work, to perform as part of the Big Dance Weekend to over 3,000 people, back again at the Liverpool One, Shavaz Park. I think the impact it had on those that took part and appreciated it as audiences, it was just a wonderful experience. It was transforming, it was emotional, and a real sense of achievement. Thus, up till this point, the works were joyous, fun, developmental, reaching out to large groups of participants or large audiences, or both. The work created with and by artists and participants was absolutely top-notch, exceptional. Then we came to 2014, which is what you've been watching. And we sort of threw all that learning up in the air a little bit and decided to try something different. And I didn't quite appreciate at the time the risk that maybe we were taking. The Big Dance We Are the City project was with Willi Dorner, who's an Austrian artist. And the project came about in a very similar way that a lot of our projects do. It started with a conversation, it spurned an idea, and then the framework that we'd been using to date was tested. Having visited the city in 2013, Willi was really intrigued by a particular area of Liverpool called Anfield, those of you who are football fans, the home of Liverpool Football Club. And it's juxtapositioned with a lot of derelict houses. There's a lot of kind of new build going on. The stadium is looking to redevelop. So at the time he came, there was a street called Lother Road, and it was half inhabited and half boarded up. So there was a kind of real shift to kind of the richness that's in a stadium to then this absolute dereliction literally right next door. And he really wanted to bring people together to take notice of what was going on in the area. I think he wanted to work with a variety of people, street cleaners and their machines, footballers, carpenters, bikers, street runners, a plethora of people that worked in the city or were part of an association or a club whose activity potentially impacted on the city. And it really was about cornering, I think I follow sort of DanceXchange around, making the invisible visible. It was an exciting opportunity, I think, to work with a variety of people in this way, recruiting participants that were not normally on our radar: police, ambulance, fire brigade, army, hotel domestics, boxers, footballers, etc. And again, considering the kind of development and training for artists who would also contribute to the process. So, as I thought, we agreed a process. With Willi, we were going to work with a team of artists and a composer, and the artists were chosen through an application process. And the idea was to meet the groups and, based on what they do, choreograph them as a parade along the streets of Anfield. And I genuinely can't put my finger on when it kind of began to unravel and go slightly wrong. We had a group of 5 choreographers, 1 composer, all from the region, to work with Willi. And we met about 18 varied groups and identified approximately 300 people in the first instance. It was a kind of process that went on over a number of months, but with kind of very small pocketed interventions, sort of 1 week, then another week, throughout the sort of 3-month period. But Willi didn't want to create any material with the artists when he met the artists, and he insisted that the material had to come from the groups and what they did, and then, they would kind of choreograph something with the groups. But he never really created any guidance or structure, and so the artists began to feel quite alienated from the process in terms of how they would begin to create this work on the groups. There was a lot of talking and very little doing. He refused to work with some groups. He would meet the groups and point blankly say, it's not going to work for me. You're not part of the group, which is a very, very different way for us to work because we're so inclusive. He kept changing his mind a lot about what he wanted to do. But he was quite insistent on what he wanted as opposed to what we could mainly offer. So for the final event, we did have some great people involved. As you can see from some of the images, we had bikers, we had knitters, we had the fire brigade, we had beekeepers, street cleaners, brass bands, 50 Moves dance group from MDI, and Dance Passion Ballroom, because Willie also didn't want to work with any dance companies. He didn't want to work with any groups that actually perform, per se. So we lost quite a few groups on the way. We lost the street runners because Willie didn't want to work with the street runners because they couldn't run across a derelict building without doing a health and safety check, and he felt that that was just too much to think about, so we didn't do that. We lost some fire dancers, youth groups, young farmers, the army was a point blank no, police, homelessness football team, boxing associations, etc. Some of it not because of Willie, I have to say, but some of it just because these were groups of people who are in the community, who don't meet regularly to perform, who have no kind of they don't consider performing to be part of what their ritual would be on a regular basis. They come to knit or they come to play football, etc. And I think on reflection, Willie wanted to create a piece of conceptual art rather than a community dance work. I'm not saying that they can't be the same thing, and that's something to discuss. But he was concerned about presenting the place. He wasn't concerned about the people in the place. He was interested in the bodies and how they demonstrated the space. He wanted a demonstration, I think, rather than a performance. I'm not saying that this is right or wrong approach. It's an approach that I think, on reflection, needs a lot more time to develop. It needs time to build trust with those particular people. But I also believe it does need some movement material to hang it on. It remains an idea that I believe can work, still work, with longer lead-in, with trust being developed and artists feeling in control of what they're doing. On a positive note, it did enable MDI to work with some extraordinary people and they were so prepared to give of their time to this project. It was extraordinary. And one member of the fire brigade after it said, it's one of the most surreal things we've ever done, and I'm not sure I'll ever drive down Anfield Road in the same way again. To talk about mums, just to finish off, my mum is my worst critic. I'm sure some of you will recognise that in parents. And I've seen many projects over the year. And in 2010, actually, I took her to Birmingham to see the Utopia by Arthur Peter. And she asked, oh, why can't you do things like this? It's brilliant. And I say this just so that you realise that she is quite discerning. She's seen a lot of work. She kind of knows what she likes. She knows what she doesn't. And she walked along with the We Are the City parade, and she looked at me just with this huge smile on her face, and she went, well, isn't that the best thing you've ever done? And I was just shocked, to be honest. But for her, to see the different people on this road, it really made sense to her. You know, she loved the idea of the street cleaners that were involved and the bikers. She loved at the ends where they all came together. There was this kind of, you know, sort of stood in silence and solidarity. And for her, the experience was just about being in that end product. And I guess for me, I'd been in a lot of the process that had gone wrong. And so I had a very, very different experience on the day. But interestingly enough, when you look at some of the images and the photographs, everybody did have a fantastic time. It was really interesting. It's not something I think I will share with you as the performance itself, because it just doesn't work for me, and I don't feel really comfortable with it at the moment. But as a photographic exhibition, it's absolutely fantastic, I think. So there's real movement in there and real choreography that we can take away with us, which I think is fantastic. And I am just going to finish. So those questions that I spoke about, you know, are we creating great art and culture for everyone? Who are the guardians of quality? And do we encourage failure? I think are really important ones, especially the failure, because in failure, I think there is so much learning. And sometimes we're so panicked about who we have to report to that we don't like to talk about when things go wrong. We just kind of assess all the brilliant stuff. It was great, it was fabulous, everyone thought it was wonderful. But sometimes it isn't. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Aaron Gallagher, MBE. And finally, I'm going to introduce you to Cath James from South East Dance. Thank you, Cath.
So yes, I'm Cath James, Programme Director at South East Dance. South East Dance is an organisation based in Brighton and Hextable, where we have 4 studios. We are funded by Arts Council and Brighton and Hove City Council, Kent County Council, and we have programming partnerships with Brighton Dome, Brighton Festival, the Old Market Theatre in Hove, as well as a network of South and East venues that program dance. We have 16 venues across the region that we work with. I've been asked to talk a little bit about audiences and the project we did in 2014 for Big Dancing. So I'll give you a little bit of context around why we did the project we did in 2014. In September this year, we were given planning permission to develop a new home for dance in Brighton called the Dance Space, which will be opening in spring 2018. And in the lead up to the opening of that, we need to really raise our profile in the region, and certainly in the city, where as an office-based organisation, our profile is quite low. We do a lot of programming in partnership with a lot of other venues, and the venues have a high profile, but South East Dance is lacking that sort of audience profile. So we've done a lot of projects. We did 2012 Big Dance with hundreds of kids on the beachfront, which was really animated and everybody had a fantastic time. But we really wanted to do something slightly different that was going to really indicate the new vision for the organisation in the future. And that vision is around a choreographic sensibility. So in 2013 for Brighton Festival, we programmed William Forsyth's installation Nowhere and Everywhere at the Same Time, #2, in the old Circus Street Market. There were over 11,000 people come through that space and interact with the beautiful pendants, hundreds and hundreds of pendants that hung from the ceiling, were suspended from the ceiling on computer operated generators that moved the pendants at various very particular times and with particular energies. And the accidental choreography was extraordinary to watch. Tiny children, everybody was just in and amongst it, and people sitting around and just watching the interaction. So there was this real curiosity and intrigue in how people could move and react to something as simple as swinging pendulums. So this really gave us a clear indication that there was that curiosity from people to come and engage with something that was slightly different, something less dancey dance and more sort of, more like an event. So when we were thinking about what we might do for 2014 Big Dance, we started to think slightly differently about what that experience might be. We wanted to start with the idea of giving a depth of engagement rather than a breadth, because we've done breadth and we were doing breadth in Canterbury with Luca. We had invisible dancers down in Canterbury. So we started to think around what we might like to, who we might like to work with. And we started off with seeing a string section, which is choreographed by Reckless Sleepers. It was a UK-Belgian company. They're an international performance company. Really intriguing work, really hard to classify, and it's exactly what we're interested in, and we're interested in going. So I spoke to Mole, Weatherall and Lane, the 2 co-directors, about how they would feel about doing a durational, large-scale, participatory, outdoor version of this piece of work. And they were bemused, I think, to start with, going, really? So they went away and did some research with the company, took it around different places in Portugal, beaches, streets, all sorts of places, and then ended up coming back and going, yes, we're up for it, we'd love to do it. So we put an open call out for women over 18 because there are SAWs involved. It was quite a commitment. It was 4 to 5 nights, 3 or 4 hours every night, plus a whole day rehearsal in the big market space. And then in the end, the project looked fantastic. So I want to show you just a couple of pictures. This is the old Circus Street Market area where we did the piece. This is actually going to be where the dance space is going to be built. So we really wanted to inhabit that space, to get the audiences that actually walk past the Circus Street Market all the time, to sort of engage with that local community at a real local level, and allow the piece to run over 3 to 4 hours so people could just drop in while they were passing, stay for as long as they like, and then leave again. So the participatory version, I think what I'd like to do in the last couple of minutes is show you a short film we had made by Shy Camera, a local Brighton-based company, who did the film of the Forsyth exhibition for us. And it also has, it's cut into with some interviews with the participants, just to give you a flavour of the impact that it had on them, and also to give you a sense of the overall piece. So if you could, that'd be great, thanks.
That's all from me.
Does anybody have a question?
I'm Kate Castle, Foundation for Community Dance. I'd just like to ask a bit, anybody who would like to answer, the legacy of the project. Could you like to say a little bit more, not only about the impact on the people who took part, what the next part of their story was, but how it affected the rest of your work for your organisation?
David.
For the festival, it's been a journey of outdoor work and dance in unusual spaces in the city, but certainly Invisible Dancing helped massively in securing the next festival for the city as a whole. So you could arguably say the outdoor work, particularly Invisible Dancing, has secured a massive legacy for the city that it still believes in. We said the other day, what do people think about International Dance Festival Birmingham? And it is, one of the things is to expect the unexpected, and that's what Invisible Dancing is.
Karen.
I think for MDI it's been about the development of the artists specifically. From the Big Dance 2012, a number of those artists got together because they didn't know each other, even though they were all in the same locale, and have set up their own companies and are creating their own outdoor work. And it really kind of demonstrated the power of community dance in a way that we didn't know. With the 2014, I think it's more about different ways of working and definitely meeting lots of different people and knowing that they are actually genuinely up for it. So I think we really want to return to it to kind of get a sense that those people get an even better journey than the one that they had.
I saw the piece in Anfield, actually, and was stood with Karen's mum at the time. And I'm with your mum. It was deeply surreal, but it was also really rather beautiful as well. Anita, can I ask the same question to you, but with a slightly different angle? Because I think you talked a lot about partnerships that had been developed, and I'm just wondering whether you could pull out just a really important legacy partnership.
Well, I think the different organisations and companies that develop projects as part of Get Scotland Dancing will have their own stories about the people that they engaged with in that way. And if I look at it, taking an overview, I think it's about the being able to, for us to be able to demonstrate the amazing capacity within the dance sector in Scotland, how it stepped up to that challenge, worked in different ways. It also brought into that conversation a wider range of dancers and dance organisations than we had been working with previously.
I think for us the legacy was twofold. One around artists, the depth of engagement with the artists and the belief in them to take risks around how they might create work that has meaning for them but also meaning for their participants. And then for us and our audiences in terms of creating that unexpected and intriguing opportunity to engage with what's going on with South East Dance. So for us that sort of has taken that unexpected event, that sort of intriguing, curious thing, and raised the profile of that a little bit more.
Thank you for those talks. And just, if it's a very quick question, Karen, your story was very inspiring because we often don't talk about failure. So really thank you for that. It was such honesty, so great. Would you suggest this, what you did can be done in the way you had visioned? I'd love to do something like that where I'm based in Croydon. There's lots of people, and every time I walk around, I'm thinking, you know, when I go to the dump yard, I want all of those people dancing. And what you presented, I thought, yeah, this is something that can really happen again. Would you do it?
Yeah, I think we would do something differently than what Willie did. I'm not saying that what Willie did wasn't interesting. I think what we didn't really have in place was the amount of resources that was needed to have really created Willie's vision. We just were unable to do that this year. But I think for me what was missing definitely was a kind of choreographic framework that the artist would work in. I think would have created a much better experience. It's not to say that the experience that we had wasn't interesting, but I think that there was just a lack of content, both for the artists to work with and Willie. So Willie has an interesting idea. If it was about just demonstrating something, because I'll just give you a quick story, which would just crease me up.
Really quick story.
Really quick story. As part of the whole experience, Willie's final week, it was getting really difficult, you can imagine, from our conversations. And this week, there was this massive demonstration of the public sector. So librarians, nurses, doctors, and they were all on the streets of Liverpool saying, we want more money. And Willie texted me to go, I'm just watching this demonstration. This is what I wanted. So, you know, he wanted a demonstration, which, and again, I think that could also work interestingly, but it wasn't quite what we were expecting because we'd had this whole conversation of making a piece of work. So yes, it can absolutely happen, and all of the people that we engaged with were really interested to do something, and they wanted to dance, but the problem was that Willie didn't want them to dance. So they'd be going, so we're going to learn a routine, or we're going to do this, that, and we'd be like, just let's see what you can do. And then they do what and it just all fell apart. But yes, absolutely, it could work, and it could definitely, it's a really interesting process, and I'd be more than happy to chat to you at another time.
So I'd just like to say thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you for Duke.